women back to almost certain death. And thus, the affirmative proposals of the following plan. The plan is that the United States federal government should increase the current cap on asylum seekers and reverse Jefferson's ruling. The role of the judge for all judges is to be an ethical decision maker within the debate round that accounts for the psychological violence that's inflicted upon women. The role of the role of the ballot is to vote for the team that focuses on being an educator and understands the structural violence that these women have endured. Okay, contention 3 is solvency. Victims of sexual assault / SMG are protected by the USSG, USIS 2018. Victims of certain crimes who have suffered mental or physical abuse are held to law enforcement and government officials in the fixing of persecuted criminals to be covered. The victims of trafficking and violent protection act include battery, immigrants who are protected and the ability of law enforcement agencies to investigate and prosecute cases of domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking of aliens and other crimes while also protecting victims. To be included this includes but is not limited to abuse of sexual contact, domestic violence, extortion, female mutilation, involuntary servitude, kidnapping, rape, sexual assault, sexual exploitation, slave trade, and trafficking. Next. America should take in more refugees. Stop 2018. For 2019, the administration set the refugee emissions to 30,000 to 30,000, a 37% drop from last year's record estimate of 45,000. Hundreds of communities across the country welcome refugees to open arms. That's not volunteers from faith and community groups to help refugees to adopt American way of life. The number of Americans volunteering to accept refugees far exceeds the number of refugees actually occurring. Next, U.S. is key to taking in refugees. New 2015. The United States should be doing more in the face of this crisis, and there is why the Prince's leadership through the United States has been leader in humanitarian responses and emerged from isolation to World War II since then. It started with the aftermath of the war and clamped down on the Ukraine. The United States has routinely settled more refugees than the rest of the world combined every year. With this in mind, it would be foolish for the United States to give us the top priority to be being the world leader in refugee asylum. It's a matter of responsibility. The U.S. took responsibility for the refugee aftermath of the war and life resettlement of 1 million in each of the other reasons. Matter critical interests we have largely benefited from refugee we have settled. Ultimately, refugees have for decades given the United States tremendous who for its humanitarian leadership, we leave a poor country, we have not taken them in. Next. The U.S. is key to relieving psychological effects from asylum seekers. Gorman 18. Doctors search for signs of trauma, they scrutinize injuries, include execution scars, bullet wounds, and nothing broken sets. Nelson is called diagnosed physical and psychological elements and amenities to state these patients on how they were hurt. Asylum seekers have the health coverage that pays for the exam, but the cover the cost of those who don't. When nearly all of the patients he sees need mental health froze, he says, because of the years of torture and abuse in their native countries. Like Global has faced increasing tough odds since early June, when U.S. Attorney Jeff Sessions announced that the gang violence and domestic abuse will no longer be considered for grounds for granting asylum. When applicants are actually at the Highlands occurrences, it definitely makes a difference. Sometimes a traumatized person is not able to relate what happened to them in a way that tells the full story. And lastly is impact. The spectrum of sexual harassment among women is far and wide. 2017, 35% of women globally have experienced physical or sexual violence. 120 million girls have experienced forced sex or other sexual acts, and almost 750 million almost 750 million women and girls alive today are made before their 18th birthday for cross-sex.
Alright, you guys started?
Yeah.
Alright, okay, so what happens after the plan is passed?
After the plan is passed, these women are able to come into safety and they're protected under the...
Is that based on fiat?
I mean, it's obviously fiat.
No, is it based on fiat? Is the plan based on fiat?
I mean, overall, like, the whole basis of this, like, the justice ruling, it wasn't in place before. The justice ruling was enacted in October.
Okay, so passing the plan, is that based on fiat? Are you going to fiat the plan? You can answer.
We don't have an answer to that question.
Alright, got you. Can you give me an example of how the United States federal government helps black women?
The United States federal government has helped black women, as I stated, it's literally my first part, on how they protect women from domestic violence.
Okay, so what exactly has the United States federal government done to stop the ways in which black women are, you can say, violated by an anti-black system, such as themselves as the United States federal government?
You're saying, how does the U.S. protect women?
How does it stop them from being violated by like such laws that are anti-black? How does it stop them from going onto the street and having to worry about being shot by a white person because they are seen as a problem in an anti-black world?
I mean, our whole case is based on the fact that we're not in an anti-black world, so.
So what kind of world are we in?
The world, yeah.
What's the world that?
Basically, right now, without the plan, the women who are seeking asylum are able to seek asylum under credible fear for persecution based on domestic violence and gang violence.
So why does the judge vote affirmative?
Why the judge votes affirmative?
Yeah, why?
I mean, through my 1AC, I have shown on how the UFSG is key to be able to help these asylum-seeking women, and my partner will go on in her 2AC on how like it will look.
Okay, so
more in the
why
future and
why is it key to vote affirmative?
Because
Does
I
it
just
stop
stated,
violence that
don't-
happens towards
Do
women?
not undermine my voice. Don't cut
Does
me
it
off.
stop
Don't
that
cut me
violence
off.
happens towards
Don't cut me
women?
off. Don't undermine my voice. As
I
a
mean,
black woman,
it's
do
kind
not
of my process.
don't.
I have
do-
time to answer
Don't
questions.
okay, but you're
Don't
asking
cut
us
me
a
off.
question
Don't
and then
cut
you're
me
not letting us answer the question.
But I'm on to the
You're
next
speaking
question.
about black
All right,
women and how
okay,
we have
thank
the
you.
space to speak.
I'm on to the next question. How about that? Is
Don't.
that fine?
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah. So how does the plan stop violence against black women? Literally, like after this plan is passed, does violence against you and your partner stop? Or rather, does it reduce by this plan being passed?
I mean,
I
we're
mean-
not dead right now. We're clearly living. We're fine.
So you're saying just because you're not dead, anti-black
I'm
structures and
saying
anti-black
that the
systems don't help
argument
you?
The
I
argument that
mean, we just stated that, like, in the world of the app, the UFSG is not an anti-black structure.
Cool. I'm done with cross. I'm gonna go get my phone to start prep.
Starting prep.
Oh, you start prep?
Yes.
Alright, then it's fine.
Are you gonna send the cards in the?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna send it out. You can stop prep.
I have 5:20.
is the order gonna be.
One off.
That's all.
Got you. Yeah. I just.
You send it to the email chain first. The first
Send it
one was
to-
long.
Yeah, I sent it to the only email chain I have. I only have one email chain.
Okay, I got it.
You got it. Everybody get it? Alright.
Just one off?
Yeah. Yeah, ready? Ready, set. Ready, set, go. The affirmative sounds like a nice way to be more welcoming and open to immigrants, but in reality, they further understand the root cause of violence and racism that immigrants experience every day. The real values that the affirmative relies on for actually further entrench the categories of inclusion, exclusion, and outside and inside and out the basis of xenophobia, turning into impacts and violence 10. One of the central strategies employed by liberal discourse on affairs and general recognition is coupled with ministry and liberal values. Ministry discourse as the public schools and see immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, individual humanity, assuring us that they just like the strategy of humanizing and encouraging normative values that relate to respect, empathy, and tolerance, acting military self, place themselves in the position of the other and recognize them as human beings. Liberalism slash ministry and arguments help sustain the invisibility of the refugee, asylum seeker, and individual, so far as they perpetuate the same categories, inclusion, exclusion, and us them as xenophobic discourse. These categories of the categories of immigrant, refugee, asylum seekers are really contested in the liberal and humanitarian discourse of citizenship, education, curriculum, but rather taken for granted, seeking recognition grounded on human use of representation of the context. These appeals depend on the same categories, exclusion, and inclusion, us them as xenophobic discourse. For liberal slash humanitarian discourse of citizenship are impossible without recourse to identity policy, preservation of bounded membership of the ethnic and citizenship boundaries. The structure of the modern sovereignty and such as the rights and citizenship are really contested and challenged and critical, and the consequence of their limits are not integrated in the struggles of new political community are more inclusive. This opposition needs to be translated into material forms and increase the agency of marginalized individual. The politics, the positive identity slash difference of rights, resource from efforts that adjust material structures and undermine the social solidarity and policy radical politics can be formed, undoing the rights and privileges of Western citizens function as they shift away from ideology concerns to issues of unjust material structures and balance and balances. Whack-a-mole link, the laws are capable of resolving sexual violence in any practice is quickly persuaded in more cities and insurance violence and fairly questioned in terms of policy, guarantee, surveillance, and data management draws the affirmative and any revolutionary potential. State 15. The history of explicit abuse of race and gender categorization in U.S. laws and policy to distribute certain types of white taints leads people to falsely believe that the conversation about racialized and gender administrative categorization is open to the argument of Jim Crow laws, race segregation, age and exclusion laws, and immigration, gender and racial exclusion and voting, other overuse of gender and race categories in population level programs. Things are now fair and equal to shift away from some of the explicit targeting of women and people of color in their written language and the law and policy have merely reorganized those functional maldistribution of the methods that replace them, resulting in producing race and gender disparities in the distribution of life changes. Population level programs are designed in ways that reflect and imply contemporary understandings of who's inside and who's outside the group of people who are protecting and cultivation is being sought, which means that they are always include determination of who's disturbed, the person who's the threat, norms regarding race, gender, sexuality, national origin, ability, and indigeneity, always condition and determine who falls on either side of that line. These data collection projects have been key to expanding the reach of the government and defining who's a member of the us nation, who's a member outside, who is abandoned or eliminated. The consequence of misoccupation of the inability to fit into the existing classification system are extremely high, particularly in the kinds of institution and system have emerged and go to target to control poor people and people of color, criminal punishment system, public benefit system, immigration systems. Next. Going to the state is dangerous for black women. Tomlinson 14. Rape is the United States is a systemic crisis, even as a 60 to 80% rates go unreported when victims who report those incidents systematically and accounted by at least 1 million cases by police departments. Sexual misconduct by police officers or public officials is the second most prevalent form of police crime. The number is likely high as the victim tend to underreport. In general, the police officials tend to use more limited definitions. Officers provide a profile of victims whose credibility would be doubted. The victim reluctant to report the crime for their perpetrators of police for the black women in the United States. Expansive of sexual assault requires understanding of historical context, institutional legacy of slavery, and the contemporary burden placed on victims. Next, the absolute sovereignty no longer needs to be direction of bare life and extension of racism and colonialism. Bias 10. The fear to question the separation of humanity and concerns from politics and just the treatment of immigration, refugees, and asylum seekers is bare life excluded from the political community and exposed to death at every turn. Signals of secret solidarity between humanitarianism and power which fight. The identification and figure of immigrant refugees, asylum seekers as fearsome and political rhetoric and news media coupled with humanitarian liberalism indicates how immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers form as inclusive exclusion of bare life and humanitarian values, view claims immigrants, asylum seekers, seekers, and simply as bodies bare life, separate from political life. They haven't been banned or not set outside the law, but rather abandoned by the exposed and threatened. Their wishing those life and outside the law becomes the shame. The incorporation of bare life inscribes dangerous along citizenship, nation, biological concepts to the state of deception, to see the mechanism of colonization. The Western states become involved in differentiation of the categorization. People cut the card. Their state and other sovereign powers construct binary categories of illegitimate and legitimate migrants, which are then weaponized against immigrants. Handbook 13. The state seeks to discern the true from the word for outside the fraudulent and unworthy illegal immigrants having law enforcement technology and nation building neo-colonial control, producing the nationalist narrative of salvation over here and barbaric violence over there. The state only detects but produces illegitimate and legitimate migrant bodies, similar to how migrants' verbal narratives are scrutinized for deceptive inconsistency and enable them to fraudulently enter the country. These bodies are scrutinized for hidden disease capable of infecting U.S. body politic, legal, economic, military, and medical interests such as hyper surveillance of migrant bodies, where real affair or visuality provide truth and desperate reassertion of purpose for the potential to do so if only administered correctly. Blood medicine is how law enterprises by political technology of confession position, specific kinds of body, particular women, migrants, queers, and people of color is already suspicious, always already potentially passing and thus always a threat. The 1AC alternative, the 1AC aligns with the mobile comments participating in for politics but refuse the creation of the world outside the state of politics, collectivized among groups, disenfranchised by peoples, by states of post-border technology, the use of racialized and hierarchized people are methods not just negative refusal, also affirmative assertion of identity and self-determination outside of the boundaries of normative state citizency. The reading of the 1AC is 1MC of is in itself adapted to self-determination that reorients away towards state power and towards empowerment. King 16, resisting that contesting challenges the status quo to demonstrate another being to the state. Refusing to express the desire to change the political structures that make up us our dominant social reality. So much a desire to turn one's back on them and create a different reality. Power and resisting constitute each other. There's no single locus of great refusal. There's a collaborative resistance. This is the meaning of negating the state by creating alternative social relations outside of it. Both a negative refusal, domination, positive assertion of dignity, power with regards to cooperating in a collective form of power situation where individuals influence each other's behavior in absence of conflict or wills. Interested requires an organization towards the practice of creating and being distinct from another existing dominant social reality. Human interest retakes resistance so happens probably undramatic, everyday and mundane acts of activation that one perform that many change or alter the landscape of power strategy or ways of being illustrated among the practical and understanding of self-determination for the mode hitting in disguise when those in power. Escape has two parts. One is the hand that has escape in reference to the thing that imposes one is on the hand is the part to escape that is entirely self-referential, where lines of flight create entirely other ways of being beyond the system. Something that has the capacity to develop its own logic, motivation, and strategy to practically escape constitute some kind of other and beyond the state that have the potential to create a new social reality rather than a different version of the same social reality. This happens through enacting ways in which people are fundamentally different forms of at odds with those in the norm and function through is incompatible. The mobile comments describes another way of being to say realm activity that's organized out of necessity, large anarchy, and equality and function as a mean through which people can pursue the freedom of movement. It's or be right reproduced by need to access rather than being owner attribute of individual group. Mobile comments is a resource not forgetting by but never forgetting by outside of it. I'm gonna go on to the role of the ballot. So yeah, the role of the ballot for the negative is to vote for the team that best creates spaces accessible for people of color. And onto their role, the judge being ethical decision maker within this round, that accounts for like psychological violence put upon women. If you believe that the state allows for the extension or the perpetuation of violence towards women, then that's a reason not to reject the way what they talk about the role of the judge, but there's also a solvency deficit on the idea that after the act, there's still going to be violence and oppression that happens against women, which is a solvency deficit, and it's a reason why you would vote neg on presumption on the idea that even if the act is passed, violence against black women specifically, or just women in general, will still happen. And also the role of that vote to team that focus on being an educator and understand structural violence women have endured. The card how much time do I have left? So basically, like, the idea is that, like, one, and cross this, like, just the idea is that, like, the United States federal government is the problem that allows for the perpetuation of violence towards women. I am a black man. I can't speak for black women, or for, you can say, yeah, I can't speak for black women, but through the King 16 card is a woman. She's a black woman that endorses this way of thinking through the mobile comments, that basically saying that it allows for the access of black women to present the ways in which they are screwed up by the system. I can't do that, but it also allows for that, that space where they can do that. And, yeah.
Okay, just for clarification, your role about was to vote for the team that represents black women, right?
That best creates spaces accessible for people of color.
Okay, so how are two black women in this debate space anti-black?
Well, the idea is that what calling on the United States federal government separates you as yourself as a black woman, but then you call on the idea of being the policymaker. So in this round, in the world of the app, you're not, in the world of the app, you're not a black woman, but you're a policymaker.
As a minority woman, I have a voice and I deserve to have my voice be heard.
Cool.
Okay, anyways, how do you solve female genital mutilation?
How do I solve for female genital mutilation?
How do you solve for female genital mutilation?
Well, obviously the argument is that I don't have to specifically solve for female genital mutilation. I just have to present the idea that the app does not solve for it, which means that it's a solvency deficit on the affirmative. How do I solve for the abuse of women?
How do you stop the abuse of women?
If I provide a way in which there's a solvency deficit on the affirmative that they do not do that, but rather the idea that the mobile comments creates a space that is open for people of black women specifically to use this space in general or other spaces to express that idea, then yes. Yeah.
Okay, just wondering, how's a man supposed to know what's best for a woman?
Oh, I already said that I don't, but the idea of using the literature of a black woman who endorses the mobile comments is an idea that I agree with that type of movement. I am not a black woman. Yes, I already said that. I can't know what happens towards black women, but rather the idea is that I know that the state is fucked up for black women, which is why I critique it.
What exactly is the alternative?
The alternative is the mobile commons, which is the idea of creating you can say self-determination or practice outside of what the state seems normal, but also just outside the state itself. It's a way of empowering myself as a person of color, but rather allowing for other people who are people of color to empower themselves through the mobile commons, of being the mobile commons to create that type of empowerment.
What does this world look like for these asylum seeking?
What is the world like for asylum seekers?
In the world of your alternative.
Well, the idea is that the state decides on who can enter and who cannot, which limits an asylum seeker from coming into the U.S., but it also limits themselves from that idea of what a freedom is. If the asylum seeker comes into the U.S., they have to face the surveillance state. They have to face police brutality. They have to face different forms of violence that happen because of the United States federal government.
What does this all look like in the world of the night? That's
What is the body doing for them? What is the body?
What is the body doing for them?
What are you doing for minority?
Well, the idea is that the mobile commons allows for people who are literally oppressed, that's what it talks about, to critique the ways in which, like, not even just repeat, but refuse the ways in which the state, or not just the state, but rather structures itself are problematic for themselves.
Okay, how does
Again,
the mobile,
I can't speak
how
for
does
a
the
black
mobile
woman.
commons account for the psychological violence that these women have?
The mobile commons accounts for psychological violence itself, meaning that anti-black structures or the state put psychological violence upon me, but not only upon me, but upon black women.
Okay,
and by creating the mobile commons allows for that to be talked
You
about.
cannot affirm to the judges that there is always a risk that this abuse and that all the harms that we have stated will still occur.
You said what? Say it again.
I'm running prep to continue. So at the end of the day, no matter what, you can affirm to these judges that there's always that risk and that there's always that possibility that these women will still be harmed, that these black and minority women will still be harmed, just because the fact that through the mobile commons, because by mobile commons you're removing the state, which is there's no law, and this basically you can affirm to the judges that there's always that risk, that there will always be harmed. There's
I'll
always
affirm
risk
that there will always be violence against black people. There will always be violence against
But
black
through
women.
your
Rather,
all,
it's the idea
can you
that
affirm
does
that?
the solvency help black women better, or does the alternative help black women better? And that's what that argument would come down to this debate.
Okay, stop prep.
Yeah. How much?
Okay, I'm
You were
just
gonna
continuing
start
running
back
prep.
from.
Oh, we have 7:26.
Starting back.
Yeah.
Stopping tab at 6:10.
Any cards?
Where there's gonna be case and then it's sent. Anyone not ready?
I didn't get it.
Hmm?
You send it?
Yeah.
You send it, okay.
You get it?
Oh, never mind. I got it.
Ready? Impact assessment. FGM affects human psychology. 2016 psychology, however, may stem from the pain, shock, and use of physical force by those performing FGM. The long-term PTSD, anxiety, depression, and memory loss maker. FGM has the same levels of PTSD is adults who have suffered subjected to early childhood abuse. 80% suffer from affective mood disorder or anxieties. Or women who undergone FGM may also be affected by chronic pain syndrome. As with other causes of chronic pain, there is also an increased risk of depressed mood with reduced social functioning, worthlessness, guilt, and even suicidal ideation. Limited mobility also increases social isolation and role loss in society. Women who have undergone who have experienced FGM tend to develop psychological conditions which make them withdrawn and uncommunicative or distressful. Next, extend our role of valuable for a team that focus on being an educator and understand the structural violence that these women have endured, and extend our role for judge to be an ethical decision maker within this round that accounts for the psychological violence affected upon women. Next, solvency extension. There are benefits to asylum. American immigration comes at 18. An asylum is authorized to work in the U.S., apply for a social security card, request permission to travel overseas, and can petition to bring families to the United States. Asylums may also be eligible for certain benefits such as Medicaid or refugee medical assistance. After 1 year, an asylum may apply for an LPR status. Once an individual becomes a permanent resident, he or she may wait 4 years to apply for citizenship. Next, solvency extension. The RA helps asylees after obtaining asylum. A refugee resettlement agency might help asylum with following ways: provide cash, housing aid, or living expenses assistance, can help you apply for government benefits and services, enroll you in English as a second language class, offer job training, counseling, and job placement services, and provide you with psychological counseling. Next, harms extension. Changes to asylum law will put women in great danger. Long 2018. Such an announcement that domestic violence and gang violence should no longer serve as a basis for seeking asylum in the United States put many asylum seekers, particularly women, in harm's way. It puts survivors of extreme domestic violence in great danger because it allows them to return to the countries where the governments do not protect them against abuse. It almost certain that these women will be killed as a result that this decision will return them to their abuses. It's part of making it so that there's no way to seek asylum. This is a way of restricting the loss coverage. This decision could have an extremely negative effect on women who are seeking asylum who are victimized because of their gender. So next, solvency extension. When migrants are not overwhelming the southwest US border, Rule 2018. We focus here on 5 statements President Trump made. 1, an overwhelming influx. Actually, the total number of migrants apprehended at the southwest border actually remains far below the kind of apprehension numbers that were routine in 1990 to 2000. 2, no more catch and release. In fact, under the U.S. law, migrant families who have requested asylum are not considered illegal immigrants, and they're being released in large numbers up and down the border. 3, they never show up. Actually, the majority of asylum seekers do show up to go first. 2016, only about 2 in 5 cases were decided in absentia. 4, abusing asylum. Immigrants' rights advocates say that immigration courts are supposed to decide each case on its own merits, and that the low acceptance rate is simply evidence that the system is working, and that asylum cases are not easy to win. 5, it's an invasion. These are very vulnerable individuals desperately fleeing violence who will come together as a group to have the protection and solidarity of each other. Now on to anti-black. This is a stick up. You are literally the post boy of hypermasculinity by literally trying to push a black woman onto the base space. You literally cut us off during the process when you go to answer the question, do you present? And this is a form of psychological violence, and this proves how you are not meeting our role of the ballot. Cross-apply this to the case as to why the judges should prefer our role of the ballot. Or after is a better method for these women because you do nothing for them at all. So we're asked, black people will be engaged in political space, just like Senator Maxine Waters, Ayanna Pressley, Michelle Obama, and other black women who have marked their way in politics. By engaging women, we're fighting against that anti-blackness that you say is perpetrated by the USFG. An example of how policy is able to is key to make sure it's changed is how Senator Flores is able to promote the involvement of black body and create the actual change through not allowing herself to be silenced by racists. He himself says that our opponent himself says that he's a black man that can't speak for black women. As black women, we're saying that your all does not work for us. Perm do both the pragmatic approach to anti-blackness is key. Perm solves better. Gato 7. Knowledge without action is useless. We must do something with that knowledge. In a room full of young people with varied backgrounds and challenges in the lives, we found ourselves thinking with distinctly pragmatic tools about epistemology, and our thoughts about the subject could affect how we seek to change the world. The tradition of American pragmatism offers powerful resources for redefining African American leadership in politics. Pragmatism can address many of the conceptual problems that plague contemporary African American political life. To embrace pragmatism is to hold a close fundamental faith in the capacities of ordinary people to transform their circumstances while rejecting hidden and not so hidden assumptions that would deny them capacity. Next, complete rejection of institutional logic of civil society crushes anti-oppression politics. Pressure 18, and living proof of this is what Senator Flowers was able to do. Although critics criticize law because it functions to legitimate existing arrangements, it's precisely this legitimating function that has made law receptive to demands. Emphasis on deconstruction as a vehicle for liberation leads to leads to conclusion. Engaging in legal discourse should be avoided because it reinforces the word it embodies. Focus on delegitimating rights rhetoric seems to suggest that there exists a more productive strategy for change which does not reinforce existing domination. No such strategy has yet been articulated. It is difficult to imagine minorities will ever discover one. People can only demand change in ways that reflect the logic of an institution that they're challenging. Demands for change that do not reflect the institutional logic, that do not engage and reinforce the dominant ideology will be ineffective. Powerless people can trigger crisis by challenging an institution by using its own logic against it. Such crisis occurs when powerless people force open a contradiction between the dominant ideology and their reality, which is what we're doing with our plan. We're working with the body that that he's saying is anti-blackness by we're forcing them out of the space where they're leaving the black people out of space by engaging with the United States federal government. Rather than using the contradiction to suggest American citizenship was itself illegitimate, protesters proceed as if citizenship were real and demand to exercise the rights, which is what we are doing in this debate round with our AV. By seeking to restructure reality to reflect American mythology, blacks benefited from efforts to resolve the contradiction by granting rights.
I'm just talking. Okay, so he made the claim about basically saying like how rape like hurts black women and everything, and how like the UFSG like is like it's a bad actor, everything, but like literally Tanera Burke, she is the founder of the Me Too movement. She is a black woman who is also an activist in order to raise awareness about the black body, about the sexual assault that occurs within this country. She like literally her whole movement created such an uprising within this world and it brings forth like the cases that he says that are undermined like within this country. So his argument basically saying like, oh, like that rape and sexual assaults like go undermined within this country, and how like the UFSG doesn't focus on that. That's combated like with the Me Too movement, as you've seen before.
Which is definitely like literally led by black women.
Exactly, it's led by the minority body, the black woman. He says that like that the minority body is unable like to engage in policy. But as my partner stated before, like through Michelle Obama, Ivana Presley, Senator Flower, and as I just presented, like like Tanera Burke, like these people are like black women who have a say in this debate round. Well, basically they're being basically like focused on this debate round, and like also like like within this world who are actually creating change for the better for these minority women. So,
and also the NEC fails to provide a way in how they're through the world of the alt, how they're actually providing the relieving of the psychological trauma that these women will face by being accepted into the United States, whereas we provide a step-by-step process of as to how they're actually helped by different agencies and how their rights are protected by the United States federal government, and that they won't be exposed to like FGM and all those other effects that we just said.
Ready, set, go. Do you use fiat?
I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay, so if you use fiat, how do you solve for violence that happens towards black women outside of this round?
I mean,
we're not admitting or rejecting the idea of fiat. Do you have another question?
No, that's what I'm saying. So like, if it's not based on fiat and knowing that you're not the actual policymakers, how exactly does this plan actually happen?
Through the United States federal government.
In general,
As I stated before,
yeah,
don't cut me off. As I stated before, judges, like I've stated like these black women who are in like the government right now, who are advocating for not only their rights but like for the black body as well, like and like the rights that they deserve within this world, and how they should be noticed, and how they should be cared for, and how they should be advocated.
Thank you. Okay, so 3 black women that you presented, right? Was 3 or so? Does that make up for how the state has allowed for violence against black women?
We're saying by these women coming up, we're actually combating the oppression that you say the state actually causes.
Who's
black
we?
woman.
Okay, so are you a black woman in this round, or are you a policymaker in this round?
You're really gonna look at me and ask me from a black
I'm asking you, like, when you take on the position of being a policymaker in this round, saying that the United States federal government should, are you a policymaker, or are you a black woman?
Is this your way of trying to strip me from my own identity?
No, it's just a way of showing that yourself by. Yeah, I'm just asking the question. Can you just answer the question?
We ain't white.
Okay, so if it's a plan based on the United States federal government, are you a part of the United States federal government? Is my question. Because are you the actors of this plan? Is my question. You too, as black women, or are the United States federal government responsible for this plan to be enacted?
I mean, as I stated before, our plan involves for the cap being raised and for the Jeff Sessions ruling to be reversed, so that we can help these black
Okay, so
and
how does that
minority women
happen
to come.
after this round?
How does that look like after this
How
round?
does it happen? Not how does it look like, how does it happen?
By going through the government.
Okay, so like, how do you, as black women who are students, go to the government? Like, how
I
does
mean,
that
how
work?
do you, as the mobile commons, a
I mean,
man,
I don't
try
call
to
on the
represent
mobile
black
comments.
women?
I mean, it's kind of my cross-sex, so if you
If
wanna
you-
ask questions, you can ask next time. So like, yeah, can you just answer my question, please?
I forgot what was your question due to the disrespect that you just handed over, so I'm confused. What was your question?
I'm gonna completely end cross-sex. I'm gonna start prep. You have the prep time right now, okay?
Sorry, now.
Yeah.